You guys are all over the place talking about the weather, talking about food, talking about movies. I'm doing well, thank you. Well, thanks, Grace. I appreciate that. My hair is a little wild, but that's what it wants to do, so I'm giving into it today. All right, guys, we are in week 12. Week 12. That means we have this week, we have next week, and then we're out for Thanksgiving break. I know. Thanksgiving is right around the corner. It is 2 weeks from tomorrow. And we don't have anybody in here from out of country. So everybody is going to be on the same Thanksgiving. The Canadian Thanksgiving is different from ours, is the reason that I mentioned that. Oh, cool, cool. And then Christmas break. That's right. We do have 2 more weeks after Thanksgiving break to get through, and then we're going to be out for Christmas for almost a month. It's going to be quite a long Christmas break. We have a similar schedule to what a college does. I know, I know. So we have quite a bit of time in between our 2 semesters. So everybody always enjoys that because you get to enjoy your Christmas holidays and do your, celebrations and your traveling. It ends up being a little more than 3 weeks, I think. Let's see, the dates for our last week. Let me look real quick. Let me pull up a calendar. Um, 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 um. Week 15 starts December 4th, and so we will be meeting for week 15 on December 6th. And then after that, we don't meet again until January 10th. So we do have a solid month of that we're not meeting for classes. Rebecca says she might be out of town then. I know. Okay, awesome. Awesome. All right, everybody's kind of gearing up for the holidays. It seems like after Halloween, it's just a sleigh ride right through New Year's. Everything goes super fast. Going out of town. Oh, good. Oh, isn't going out of town. All right. Sometimes it is nice just to stay home. Are you already listening to Christmas music? Our house doesn't start until after Thanksgiving. We get through that, and then we are full-blown Christmas. But we do kind of limit ourselves. And then we go right on through New Year's. A week before Thanksgiving, my mom does that. She would have her Christmas tree up all year round, I think, if if it wasn't such a silly thing to do. Ah, yeah. Yeah, I'm afraid that we will get tired of all the Christmas stuff, and it won't be special if you start too early, but that's just what we do in our house. Oh, the Disney World Christmas party. That sounds fun. Well, you guys have fun, Emma. Wowzers. I've never been to Disney World at Christmas time. I've been to Disney World quite a few times, but it's usually in the fall or the summer, not during Christmas. Oh, neat. Well, you guys be safe. And if you miss class, we will miss you, but oh, it's probably gorgeous. Probably. I went to Dollywood. It was actually in between Christmas and New Year's one year and saw it all decorated. It was spectacular. Usually theme parks do a good job of decorating for the seasons and for events like that. So that's really neat. All right, guys. Well, today we are going to do quite a few four practice sentences together. I think we're doing 3 or 4 together in class today. We're not doing breakout rooms, but we're doing them together because these that I'm giving you are getting more complicated, and I want us to work with them, all as one group so that you guys are prepared whenever you go to do them on your own. We're going to continue with poetry and stresses, talking about meter. We are preparing for our first academic paper, and don't worry, if you are the kind of person who has not really had any big papers that you've ever written so far, we're going to walk through this very slowly through the first academic paper. We have 3 total in the year for English 4. Then we're going to have our mystery questions. If we have time, we're spending a lot of time talking about our academic paper, so we might not be able to squeeze that in. And then we'll wrap up class today talking about Wild Boy, the end of the book. You guys were talking about how you didn't really enjoy it all that much, and that's okay. We don't always enjoy the literature that we study, but hopefully we can find things that we can appreciate with it. And then we are kind of gearing up in our class for Christmas by getting ready to read A Christmas Carol. Charles Dickens is the one who wrote A Christmas Carol. It's a classic tale. You probably have read or seen a version of A Christmas Carol, but that's what we're going to be doing for our last book of the semester. So I'm excited about it. This is a really good book, really good lessons in it. Let's open up with a word of prayer, and then we'll get started. Right, the Muppets version. A lot of kids have seen the Muppets version or the Mickey Mouse version. That's what I grew up watching. Mickey's A Christmas Carol. Such a good one. I still hum the music. Do you? Oh, that's cool. Very cool. All right, well, let's open with prayer, guys, and then we'll get started. Okay, here we go. Heavenly Father, I thank you for all of these students. I thank you for those who are here and who are ready to participate today. And I also thank you for those who are not able to be with us for whatever reason. And Lord, I ask that whatever reason that they have for missing class, that they're blessed in their endeavors. Father, I pray that this week is a good one for all of these kids, that as we continue to plug along through the semester, they don't feel too pressured, too stressed as they're just, kind of putting those weeks behind them in these semesters. And Lord, I pray that the rest of this class is a good one, that I'm able to be clear in my instruction and that we work together very well. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so the reason that we're doing all of these 4 practice sentences together in class today is because this week, whenever you have 4 practice sentences, they will not be for participation like they have been so far this year. Whatever you score on the quiz is what goes down in the grade book. So we're kind of gearing up for the for real thing in class today. So let me get my tools all set up. Let's go through this sentence, and I have a method of doing these that might be helpful to you. So let me kind of talk myself through this first sentence for you, and just have you guys answer some questions for me. When the giant looked down, he saw Jack climbing the beanstalk. What I do, instead of starting with line 1, going to line 2, and so on and so forth, I start with line 3 with phrases. That tends to help with the lines above it. So do you guys see a phrase? This is not a 4 practice sentence in the workbook. This is actually from our Magic Lens text. Prep phrase in the beginning, that's a good guess, Emma, but it's actually not. When is not a prep? Oh, very good. But climbing the beanstalk is what kind of phrase? Climbing the beanstalk. Looks like one of those verbal phrases. Uh-huh. When the giant looked down is actually something else, Liam. We'll talk about that. It's not a phrase. It's something else. And this one, right, climbing the beanstalk is a gerund phrase. That's right. When the giant looks down is a clause, not a phrase, because it has a subject and a verb in it. That's the difference between a clause and a phrase, right? Clauses and phrases are both groups of words, but clauses have subjects and predicates in them. And right, it's a dependent clause. I don't see any other phrases. So now let's go back up to the top. Identifying that gerund phrase is going to help us on line number 1 when we start to get to it. Now, what part of speech is when? That's a dependent clause. It's the beginning of a dependent clause. It's a subordinate conjunction. Sarah, look at you. I have so many people get confused about that. Way to go. Dependent clauses always start with subordinate conjunctions. We call them plain old conjunctions. Very good. How about the? What part of speech is the? Good girls, it's an adjective. How about giant? A noun. Looked. That's a verb. Excellent. Down. This one may trip you up. Oh, but it did not. You smarty pants. It is an adverb. How about he? That's a pronoun. Awesome. Saw. Verb's the word. Jack. Easy one. A noun. Here we go with that gerund phrase. What is climbing? So it's the beginning of a gerund phrase and it's naming. It's a noun. That's right. This is naming what Jack saw. So climbing is a noun in this case. How about the? Adjective. You guys are awesome. And beanstalk. Wunderbar. Nice job. Okie doke. Wonderful. Do you see how, I mean, it didn't give us just a whole ton of help, but it did help us whenever we got to the word climbing to have already identified that it's the beginning of a gerund phrase. That's kind of nice because, I might have been tripped up on that. I might have even put my blinders on and called that a verb if I didn't already identify it as a gerund phrase. So that helps us. Let's go to line number 2. This is going to be funky because I have 2 clauses. Yes, I have an independent clause, but I also have a dependent clause, which also has a subject and a verb. Yes, exactly, Rebecca. So giant is one of my subjects, and he is another one. Not technically a compound subject. This is 2 different clauses. So technically not a compound subject. What else do I do on line number 2? Looked and saw are the verbs. What kind of verbs? Both of them are the same kind. They're action verbs. Good work. Ta-da! 2 sets of subjects and verbs, 2 clauses. What else? This is where things start to get a little hairy. Ooh, Jack is something on line number 2, Sarah, but it's actually not the direct object. He didn't see just Jack. He saw climbing the beanstalk, didn't he? So that gerund phrase is naming what he saw, what the giant saw. What was seen climbing the beanstalk was seen. Who did he see climbing the beanstalk? He saw Jack climbing the beanstalk. There's my spiral of energy. Let me show you again here. What was seen, there's where my energy begins. What was seen, climbing the beanstalk was seen, and that whole flock of words is working together to be the direct object. And then who was seen climbing the beanstalk? It was Jack. In my book, it's on page 162, Grace. And I'm not doing all of the sentences from that page, just a couple that I thought were worth looking at. Now, what about in my dependent clause here? Do I have anything after the verb like a direct object going on with that? Nope. I just have an adverb. No. And that's okay. Just because I have an action verb doesn't mean I'm going to have a direct object. A lot of times I do, but in this case, I just have an intransitive verb where that energy is staying like a battery. Okay, now let's go on down into line 4. What is my clause situation? We've already really talked about it. This is a complex sentence because I have a dependent clause, pendant, in Dependent clause. Sorry, it takes me a little while to type this all out. It is a complex sentence, that's right. It's a complex declarative. That's also something that you identify there. And if I wanted to give you my pattern, I could tell you D comma I is my sentence pattern. I know, shocker, it's a declarative sentence, right? We will have a handful, and I mean a small handful, of sentences that are something other than a declarative, but most of the time that's what they are. Right, it's a horse and a cart. Actually, here they put the cart before the horse, didn't they? Usually we're advised not to do that. Any questions on this sentence? I don't see anything being typed, so I think we're ready to go on. Awesome sauce. Here's another one. Jack had sold him the cow for a few beans. It was a mistake. Again, let's go for line number 3. Are there any phrases in here? For a few beans is a prepositional phrase. You got it? That's definitely going to help us on line number 2. Yes, because it is past tense, and so we're still doing okay with the tense there, Emma. Good question though. I do not see any other phrases in here. So let's go back up to line 1. What part of speech is Jack? Of course, he's a noun. How about had? Ooh, Emma is more specific. She says not only is it a verb, but it's a helping verb. I don't ever have to say that it's a helping verb anywhere in our 4-practice breakdown, but I do identify it as a verb. How about sold? If had is my helping verb, sold is my main verb. You got it. How about him? A pronoun. Nice. The, an adjective. Yes. How about cow? It's a noun. How about for? A preposition. We kind of already knew that because we found the thing already. How about a? There we go. Adjective. Few. Telling how many. Another adjective. Beans. Wonderful. It. Good. That's a pronoun. Good. Some people get that mixed up. How about was? A verb. And a. Another adjective. And mistake. Oh, you guys didn't get tripped up on that. It is a noun. Good. That's the bulk of our work there, isn't it? Now let's go to line number 2. You guys take the lead on this one. What do we do for line number 2? Jack is the subject. Had sold. Good. I kind of count those together as the whole verb. We call it a verb phrase. Oh, and somebody else pointed out that it is another subject. Cow is the direct object. I know I'm jumping around. Sorry about that. Was is a linking verb. Correct, correct. Mistake would not be a direct object. It would be something. There you go. She corrected it. It would be the subject complement because I have a linking verb there. And him is the indirect object. Look at us having 2 indirect objects in a row. Kind of like hitting the lottery twice in one day. No, I'm just kidding. Not quite that rare, but they are pretty rare, right? Okay, so we're pretty good with line number 2. I mean, we've identified almost every single word in here except what's in the prepositional phrase. And of course, nothing on line number 2 will be found in a prepositional phrase. Now, what's our clause situation? down here at the bottom. Compound sentence, two independent clauses. Uh-huh, uh-huh. I like it. It is declarative, of course. So it's compound declarative, and I like that somebody gave me the pattern. There we go. Two independent clauses back to back joined by a semicolon. If we have a semicolon, we don't also need a coordinating conjunction. That's just with a comma. The semicolon is a bit stronger piece of punctuation, so it doesn't need the help of the conjunction. I know, surprise, surprise, it's declarative. All right, so that one was a little bit different than the first one. We had a complex sentence, now a compound sentence. This one I think is easier. To me, compound sentences are easier. I think in the entire book, the workbook, I think there is one exclamatory sentence, if I remember correctly. They do not stick those in very often. Oh, look at this one. It's different. Why did Jack want to steal the treasure from the giant? What? It is interrogative, and it's got some funky things about it because it's interrogative. But let's go to line 3 first and find any phrases that we have in here. What phrases do we have? From the giant. Get that labeled. Ooh, and we have an infinitive. That's right. Infinitive phrase. There we go. Actually, to steal the treasure is all working together to name something. Name what Jack did, actually. Yeah, so that's an infinitive phrase. Good job. All right, that should help us too on line number 1. Let's jump back up there. There are no other phrases. If we found any other phrases, we wouldn't have anything else left in the sentence, would we? Okay, what is why? We're starting off with a curveball. What is why? Ooh, I know. Not a conjunction. That is an excellent guess, but no, it isn't a conjunction. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? No, not an interjection either. Another good guess. Not a noun. An adverb. That's what it is. It's modifying the verb did want. Oh, excuse me. A lot of our question words like why and how and when, those are going to be adverbs if they're used as question words like this. Okay? How about did? What part of speech is did? That's a verb. Is, are, was, were, and, be, been, has, have, had, do, does, did. There it is. And Jack. That's a noun. Awesome. But want. Uh-huh, uh-huh. It's another verb. Oh, wait a second. I'm already noticing something that we'll deal with on line 2. I have 2 verbs, a helping verb and a main verb, split. Weird. Okay. All right. Well, we'll deal with that later. To steal is the beginning of our infinitive phrase. In the quiz, you will be able to see this a lot more clearly because I already clump it together in the same question. If this infinitive phrase is naming, then to steal together is actually a noun. This is naming something. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. But again, on your quizzes, the question will not have to and steal in 2 separate. Stop. Will not have 2 separate questions for to steal. It will all be in the same thing. Okay. How about the word the? Now that we've had those challenging ones, let's have an easy one. Floater across the plate. There we go. It's an adjective. How about treasure? A noun. From. The rest of these should be easy. Preposition. The again, an adjective, and giant. All right. Awesome, guys. Okay. Now, let's deal with this weird verb situation on line 2. For interrogative sentences in the English language, for question sentences that we say, most of the time we will split our verb, our helping verb and our main verb. It will kind of surround the subject. So what is my subject? Why do we do that? I'm not real sure. I don't know the reasons for it, but I just know that it is. Jack is my subject, so then what is my verb? It's going to be an action verb. I'll go ahead and tell you. Did and want. So that's how we label it. Split around that subject. Weird? Yes. Do we have anything else to label on level 2? I'll give you a hint. You do. Ah, good idea. Rebecca's saying, well, treasure should be something. Uh-huh, uh-huh. We do have a direct object, but it's not just treasure. Not just treasure. To steal the treasure is the direct object. That flock of words is working together to name the direct object. That's right. That's okay. Aren't you glad we're doing this together instead of me just turning you loose this week? Your sentences for the 4 practice sentences this week are not going to be quite this bad. Alrighty, and of course, nothing on line 2 will be in the prepositional phrase. What's going on with the clause situation that we have? It's just one independent clause. So it's simple, but it's not declarative. It is interrogative. There you go. Little different. Yay, something different than declarative. Well, and that's part of the reason why I chose to do this sentence, because it's not declarative and it had those funky little things going on with the verb and the subject. Nice job, guys. I don't see anybody typing. So we're going to move along to poetry. Poetry. Now, I've asked you guys this before. I've asked you guys if you were into music. Many of you said yes, you are into music. You either sing or you play an instrument. And then I also asked you if anybody has ever tried to write lyrics to match music. Some of you, very few people in my classes have ever said yes to that, but it is a challenging thing to do because you have to match the beat and the meter of the song, not patient enough, right? To the beat and the meter of what we say. Did you know that every time that you speak, you are speaking in a certain type of meter? You don't know it, but you are. I bet it did, Jennifer. There are a lot of things to think about whenever you're writing music, and then when you're writing music and lyrics to go with it, oh, land sakes, makes you respect the people in the music industry. Are you trying to do it now, Sophia? Well, maybe this will help you to understand that there are patterns, and those patterns can be broken down into pieces called feet. Oh, good for you, Jessica. Man, you just must be a natural, because I don't know that I could do it very easily. We have different types of feet. Now, if you would like to turn to page 37, this might help you. Turn to page 37 with me. I do want to show everybody this, even if it doesn't help you out too much. Give me a green check if you are a visual learner, if you need to see it to understand it. A few green checks going up. They're visual learners. Some people are a combination. Some people are really strong one way or the other. I myself am a visual learner, like a lot of you guys. I have known students who are auditory learners. My husband is a kinetic learner. He has to touch it to truly understand it. Right, and Grace says that she's a kind of a combination, but look at all the visual learners that we have in here. The textbook is pretty nice because instead of just having things to read and hear and understand, it gives us a visual. What do you see at the bottom of page 37? Dots. Mm-hmm. Kind of a pattern of dots, a series of dots, right? We have smaller gray dots, also lower gray dots, and we have bigger purple dots. hmm hmm So what do you think those dots represent? Stressed and unstressed syllables. And it makes sense that the smaller gray dot would be an unstressed syllable and the larger purple dot will be a stressed syllable. Now, if you will, it gives us kind of some information on the patterns in between here, but if you'll turn to pages 40 and 41, this is a visual way that you can remember these different types of feet that we have. So we have either two-syllable feet, like iambic, trochaic, spondaic, or pyrrhic feet. Those are on page 40. And we have three-syllable feet, like they show on page 41. So I like that they give us the dots. That's really helpful to me. So let's look at these different types of two-syllable feet on page 40 and then match them to the correct type of the correct words over here. Okay, so an iambic foot is an unstressed, then a stressed syllable. So which one of these on the right side of the yellow line would be an iambic foot? To the, mustard, below, or huge wave? Which one works? Below. That's right. I put my little red line right there so it doesn't interfere with my yellow one. Awesome. How about a trochaic foot? The second one is a stressed, then an unstressed. It's like you flip over the iambic. Uh-huh. It's straight across. Mustard. The stress comes first. How about the spondaic foot, where it's two stressed in a row? That's huge wave. Excellent. In process of elimination, the pyrrhic foot is two little words with no stresses. Usually you have to put things like two little words like to the together. So you guys are hearing the stresses. You guys are pretty good with that. The dots can probably help though. All right, so those are all of the two-syllabled feet that we have. We have some three-syllabled feet. It gives us four different three-syllable feet on page 41. However, the ones in the top in that gray box are the ones that are the most common. Either the dactylic foot, where we have stressed, unstressed, unstressed. So we have the stress on the front part of that foot, like hand him the, or happily, or weather the. Those are dactylic feet. We also have anapestic feet, which are like we flip over the dactylic foot, where the stress is on the back end of the foot instead of the front end. So it's unstressed, unstressed, stressed. Like I say, on the top. The stress is on the back end of that. These are two anapestic feet back to back. Analytical tree. I have no idea what an analytical tree is. Do you guys? Anybody ever heard of an analytical tree? That's odd. No. Makes me think of Pocahontas, though, right? The tree is analyzing Pocahontas's problems. Flashback to childhood. But here we have the two analy. There's my three syllables with stress on the back. Tickle tree. Oh, excuse me, tickle tree. And that would be the second one. That's all right. That's all right. Okay, so those are the feet. If you are thinking, oh my gosh, are we ever gonna have a quiz over this? Am I gonna have to master this in order to do life well? No, no to both of those. Okay. No, we are not gonna have some big test over meter and feet. This is a very advanced way to study poetry. And quite frankly, if you never understand how poetic meter works, you will be able to live a very normal, happy, successful life. Why are we doing it? Because it's an element of our language that's deeper and we can appreciate what we read more. Liam, unless you're going to be a poet. Anybody in here going to be a professional poet? Anybody? Jake is celebrating. No, not gonna happen, right? But it's nice to see that there are people who take this into consideration. And maybe some of you guys, like Sophia, is writing some lyrics. Maybe this will help her with writing lyrics for her sister. I like it. I like it. There is one foot that is quite dominant in our language. As a matter of fact, anybody who is just saying a regular old sentence, I'm going to the store today, I am speaking in a very natural iambic foot, repeated iambic foot, okay? So the natural up-down flow of the English language, if we broke it down, the regular sentences that we speak, we would break it down into lots and lots of iambic feet. Not 100%, but the dominant foot is an iambic foot. There you go, Sophia. No, Grace, but maybe you can appreciate poetry about love by understanding all of this meter. That's a cool profession. Probably be a fulfilling one. Okay. All right. Old Billy Shakespeare, he knew that the dominant type of foot that we speak in the English language was an iambic foot. And so he used it a lot. Like almost always, he used iambic feet. As a matter of fact, he used iambic pentameter. He used 5 iambic feet per line in his poetry and in his plays as well. So if you were to break down, that's the reason that his plays look the way that they do. He wrote in iambic pentameter most of the time. Now, why do we call it iambic pentameter, you think? A little bit of vocabulary sneaking in here. That sneaksy vocabulary. Pent or penta means 5. So we name the meter, and meter means measure, right? So we name the meter iambic pentameter based on the type of feet that are in the line and how many feet are in the line. Kind of like measures of music, right? So here's a foot or a measure. Here's a foot or a measure. Here's a foot, here's a foot, here's a foot. I've got the slashes in between them so that we can see them. Now I'm going to read this. You can see where I've broken it down into the iambic feet, and you can see where the stresses are. They're on the back end of the foot. Now listen to this. I'm not going to really overly emphasize the stresses, but I want you to just listen. Does this sound funny or does this sound normal? And may there be no moaning of the bar, but such a tide as moving seems asleep, and that which drew from out the boundless deep, and may there be no sadness of farewell, for though from out for though from out are born of time and place, I hope to see my pilot face to face. Sound funny or normal? Normale. Absolutely normal. Because that iambic foot is a very natural roll of the English type of meter. Okay? So if you ever study William Shakespeare in any other literature class or in college or whatever, you will be talking about iambic pentameter, and now you know what iambic pentameter is. Now this is iambic trimeter, all these lines are. Why did they call it that? Why did they call it iambic trimeter? It does. If you overstress it, it does sound funny, but if you just read it normally, it just flows. Right. I have 3 feet in here. 3 iambic feet for each line. Tri means 3. We know that. So there you go. Isn't it nice the way that they name things logically? Oh, hallelujah, we can figure it out. So I'm going to read these 2 just to hear the flow. When I put out to sea, too full for sound and foam, and after that the dark, the flood may bear me far when I have crossed the bar. Very nice, very nice. Much shorter lines, but still that natural flow. So these are how lines can be divided. Anybody ever heard of a stanza before? I think of them as the paragraph of a poem, if that makes sense. Yeah, a stanza is pretty easy to spot because it's the group of lines before the break. We have quite a literal break in the lines here with a blank line in between. So here's a stanza and here's a stanza. So if I'm trying to pull your attention, like if we're looking at a long poem, I'll say, okay, let's look at stanza 3. It's pretty easy to kind of count down and go, okay, 1, 2, 3. I'm looking at the third stanza. Stanzas are named specially too. This one's called a quatrain. Why would they call it a quatrain? Mm-hmm. Because it has 4 lines. Right. Oh, right. 1, 2, 3, 4. And quat or quad means 4. Look at them. Don't you love it? Love it whenever I can use the Latin that I'm studying. So there we go. That's how poems can be divided. Now I'm going to read this. See what you guys think about the meter. And ew, Latin. Actually, yay, Latin. It helps us to understand things. Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea, but such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. Can you start to hear that up-down pattern? Maybe you can't pick it out or label it or draw, circle the feet or anything, but we're starting to, oh yeah, there is that natural rhythmic flow. It's on purpose. Now, how to read a poem. I didn't learn this until I was about a junior in high school. I had a really good teacher in my junior year of high school. I actually had really good teachers, you know, throughout in English, which may be why I'm an English teacher. People read poems wrong quite often because they want to stop at the end of the line. Well, we pay attention to punctuation in poetry just like we do whenever we're reading in a book. So, in a book, we have lines to paragraphs. Do you stop with your inflection at the end of each line? If I'm reading maybe a paragraph out of here in Wild Boy? Of course I don't. I go all the way to the what before I end my inflection for my sentence. The period. It could be a period. It could be an exclamation point, right? I could make a little pause at a comma, maybe a semicolon, something like that. But I'm paying attention to my punctuation to tell me how to read in that paragraph, in that prose, in that book. But in poetry, people tend to ignore the punctuation and just look at the ends of the lines. Well, that's actually a mistake because we have two different types of lines. We have an end stopped line where a piece of punctuation tells us, hey, slow down or stop. And then sometimes we have jammed lines where I don't have anything telling me to stop my inflection here. So let me read this to you and you listen for whether I pause at the end of the line and why I pause, or if I just keep on going. Is does a mistake because you use does for a singular word? Over here, Emma? Is it here? She thinks she's found a mistake. Um, does not stop. Oh, flow and does, those are both singular. Of the lines is a prepositional phrase, so we don't think about lines. She was digging for it. She was really wanting there to be an error there. Okay, so I'm going to read this to you guys. You listen for how I read it and when I do my pauses. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out are born of time and place the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot Anybody got their wheels turning about what they might write about? Don't really know. That's all right. Ah, sin is what makes us human. Okay, all right. So a little bit of thought going into it, but maybe you need some time to process it. That's all right. The reason that we are talking about this is because we have talked about some elements of what makes us human in The Wild Boy. So that's why we're doing this topic at the end of this book. Liam, I like that you pointed that out. He said that there are many places that this paper could go. I agree. I agree. I'm thinking that it could go really one of three ways in my mind. Okay, we could talk about how being made in God's image makes us human. Eden, I think the final draft of this paper is going to be due at the end of Thanksgiving break. So at the end of week 13, which you will have 2 weeks to do week 13's assignments. So that's usually good news because you guys actually have 3 weeks to work on it, including the Thanksgiving break. 800, 800 words. No, that would be the final. Well, is that going to be the rough draft? That is the rough draft, isn't it? Yeah. Our need for companionship is another way. That's the second way that I was thinking. You could go either, spiritual, you could go psychological, the things that we need. We need companionship, we need communication, we need those kinds of things from other people which separate us from the animals. There is another way that we could do it. You could go talking about the physical differences between us and all the other creatures of the earth. Hmm. Right, those are details that you could add. Uh-huh. Animals do need companionship too, but humans need it on a level that it's just a little different. But that would be under the psychological umbrella, right? You could do a combination of talking about different things. It doesn't have to be, I'm only talking about the spiritual stuff or I'm only talking about the physical stuff. You could do a combination of those things. This question is a really vague one to give you that flexibility. So if you want to focus on one thing, you certainly can. If you want to branch out and cover a couple of different aspects, you can do that as well. So we're still all pointed in the same direction, but we have some wiggle room. This one needs to be in third person. Good question. Our symbolism paragraph, I kind of waived that little rule and said, well, you guys can use first person for symbolism because it's something that symbolizes it to you. But third person, right, is more academic, more professional, and most of the time we use third person when we're doing academic writing. So let's talk about what your job is going to be this week. There you go, Jessica. Exactly. I like those ideas. So you guys are starting to spitball some ideas. That's your job this week, actually. We are in the pre-writing phase of this paper. Your job this week, your assignment this week is really in three different parts. You're going to brainstorm for part one. Brainstorm 3 points that you want to make about what makes us human. Now, here is a suggestion that I always give my students. I'll make this yellow because it matches here. I recommend that they make some sort of graphic organizer to order their thoughts. You start with your topic in the center circle maybe, and you branch out. Here's my point number one. Here's my point number two. Here's my point number three. And that way you're kind of organizing those into the thought bubble things. My students have called this the spider graph, the web graph. things like that. I don't care what you call it as long as you are organizing your thoughts in it. So this is just the brainstorming phase. No, no. Where do you want us to get your sources? I'll answer that in just a second, Grace. We will talk about it. Ooh, Morgan likes the brainstorming part. Me too. Feel like it's a safe way to just get ideas out there. So some sort of graphic organizer, maybe even some sort of list. All right. Okay, doke. So that's the brainstorming part. However you want to do it, this is just a suggestion of how you can. The second part is doing your research. We'll talk about that on the very next slide. I'll expand on that because you are going to be looking outside of your own brain to get ideas to put into your paper. So this does have a research element to it. Give me a green check if you have done research to put into a paper before. Oh, quite a few of you. That's terrific. If you've never done it before, it's all right. I'm going to be going through every step of what to do. Okay? All right. So, good. We're starting from a pretty good spot though if most of you have done that. Part 3, this is going to be the only part that you actually turn into me. Part 1 and part 2 are really your stuff, your notes to use for later on, but part 3 you're actually going to turn into me. You're going to create your thesis and your outline. We're going to learn about both of those today in class. Seriously, Rebecca? Oh, wow. That's whoa. You guys did some really detailed stuff. That's good. Excuse me, that's good. We're going to move a little faster than that. I bet. I bet. Usually students don't go, "Ooh, research paper class. I want to take that." They go, "Do I have to? Do I have to take that research paper class?" Yes, you do. We haven't talked about it yet, Grace. We haven't. We're going to talk about that next. Okay? All right. She is. She's ready to get her stuff going. Okie doke. We're covering all this, guys. I am not throwing you out to drown, I promise. Now, doing research, you have 2 sources that you're required to have. One of them has to be the Wild Boy book. Okay? Use whatever you want to out of here, quotes, an idea, something like that, out of here. Yes, you do. You have to do citations. I will teach you how to do that. So one of your 2 sources has to be this. You can have more than 2 sources, Rebecca. Good question. Minimum of 2. One of them has to be Wild Boy. The other one, or other ones, as you may choose to do, can be an internet source, but it needs to be credible. Make sure that it's credible. You need to, no, Liam, as long as you reference your 2 sources at least once, that's what I'm looking for. I know we all love Wikipedia and it comes up so early in our Google searches, but it's not a reliable source. And we all know why, right? Because they can change things. Anybody who's got a login to Wikipedia can change it. And they could tell you that polar bears have, they're purple with yellow spots. And they would leave it up there for as long as somebody would, before somebody catches it and changes it. What sources would you talk about? You'll just use a quote or an idea from one of your 2 sources. I'll give you examples of it. They do. They put a lot of fake stuff on Wikipedia, so make sure that your site is credible on your internet source. And, quite frankly, most of you will use internet sources because that's just what we do this day and age. I used to have to go to the library and find stuff that was in paper. But you guys usually use the internet, which is fine. Although you could go to the library or, maybe go to a dictionary or something and use a paper published work like a magazine or a newspaper or an encyclopedia. Do you? Do you? I know paper, what's that? It's that stuff that crunches and, You could also use, this is an interesting one that people don't usually think about. You could also use an interview. I know a library? What's that place? An interview would be from a person who would be knowledgeable in this area. So let's say that maybe your dad knows a lot about psychology. Maybe you could interview him about some stuff that he knows. Maybe you could interview your youth pastor or your pastor if you're close with them and talk to them about the spiritual stuff that makes us human. People don't usually use interviews, but they are a viable source. Television programs are also something that works well. I know that there's a really cool show that we used to watch called Brain Games. That's a really neat one. It tells a lot about the human brain and how it functions, maybe something like that. Something on the Discovery Channel. I know, isn't Brain Games cool? I remember so much from watching that. No, I would not use anything fictional or anything like a talk show. No, please do not refer to Jimmy Fallon. Although hilarious, it would not be relevant to what we're talking about. Exactly, exactly. But these are all options for you for that second source. And Rebecca asked, she said, well, can we have more than two sources? The book and then maybe a couple of sources? Absolutely, but no fewer than two. Wild Boys one, and then pick another one. Okay? And be sure to get the information to cite your sources during your research. I'll show you guys how to do that. So if you're like, well, I really don't know what I need, if you're going to the internet, just put the little star, click the little star to bookmark that page so you can find it really easily. Keep that magazine for a few days until we are able to talk about it. Make sure that you flag that television program that you were referring to or whatever. Okay? All right. Anybody else have any questions on doing your research? Absolutely, Grace. Sure, they'd be a great resource for you. Yep, pinning the page to your tab. I do bookmarks a lot of times, but that would work as well. Great. Oh, excuse me. All right, we're looking good. Let's see if Emma has anything that she's asking before we move on to talk about thesis statements, outline. Yes, Emma, you will. Actually, that's next, I think. Yes, it is. We are going to be doing a bibliography in MLA format. We call it a works cited page. Okay? It's always hard for you. Well, Emma, I'm actually giving you one of the sources right here. If you are using, well, everybody is supposed to use Wild Boy as one of your sources. This is what you would put at the very last page of the paper, your works cited page. Also, some people call it a bibliography. It's called works cited. Oh, no, Jessica. Yes. So this is how you would put that on that very last page. You would put the author's name, last name first. So Mary Lesieur. Then you put the title, Wild Boy, The Real Life of the Savage of Aveyron. So we put the title and the subtitle. What is Somerville, Massachusetts? What's that all about? Where it was published. Exactly. Exactly. This stuff can be found inside the first couple of pages of the book, but I've given it to you. How about Candlewick Press? I will be telling you all about that in a future class, Grace. I'll give you all that information. This is the publishing company. What about 2013? Did they just pick a random year? What's that? That's when this book was published. So the story is 200 years old, but the book is only 4 years old. Yeah, exactly. And this is a print book. Now, mine is a print book. Yours may not be. Yours may be the Kindle version. In that case, you would put ebook right here or digital copy. You could put that as well. But this just tells me, okay, was it actually a paper source or was it an online source? If you do a website, then you just put web right here. If you are curious, okay, so Grace, this is kind of answering your question too. You can do a little bit of research on that on your own. She was asking, well, what if the article that I find online doesn't have all this information, like where it was published? A lot of times it doesn't, right? Go to, whenever you go to Google, Google MLA citations, and find the Purdue OWL page. Usually it'll be the very first thing that pops up. It might be, second or third. You can write Kindle, the Kindle version, or the digital version, or ebook. I'm going to be real strict about that. But go to Purdue OWL and use their information. This is going to be, oh man, I would bookmark this page because I used this throughout high school, throughout college, throughout my master's degree whenever I was using Purdue OWL. Okay, this is a great site. Very user friendly. Sarah even vouches for it. Grace, that's an excellent source. The Bible would be a great source. So if you have Wild Boy and the Bible, there are your two sources. Yeah. Cool. Some of you may be like, oh yeah, check. Got it. Go to Purdue OWL and it'll tell you. It should be able to tell you. There you go. Is there a limit or a maximum number of sources? No, there is not. Ooh, Sarah's going to try an interview. Atta girl. Branching out. Okay. Depending on the Bible that you use, it will be, the King James Version, the NIV. There are different ways to cite it, and so try and find your information on Purdue OWL. If you absolutely can't, I'll help you out. Okay? I don't know off the top of my head how to do that though. That's why I'm kind of pointing you guys in this direction because there are so many details about citations that I'm actually not, I haven't memorized them. So this is a great source. Alrighty, I think we're doing good. So we're going to do internal citations. This is where you tell where your information comes inside of your essay. We don't use footnotes. That's Chicago style writing. We do MLA, and so we have internal citations or parenthetical citations. I will be teaching you about that in the weeks to come. So I don't want to give you too much information today. It would be like an information overload. So we will learn about those in a future class. But we are going to talk about your part 3, making your thesis statement. Are you guys pretty solid with making your own thesis statements? Probably been asked to do so. Oh, I bet they do, Grace. Here's a way that you can put together a thesis statement. Okay. This is not the only way to do a thesis statement, but this is the way that might work for you guys for this paper. It's kind of like an equation, if you will. I have a topic, a direction, and my 3 main points because that's what you guys are going to come up with. This will ultimately end up being a 5-paragraph essay for you. We're pretty good with 5-paragraph essays, I feel sure. So this is how we would put it together. Let's say that my topic is I'm comparing Asian and African elephants. Okay, so my topic would be African and Asian elephants. All right. My direction would be I'm telling you the differences between them. And then my 3 main ideas for my body paragraphs would be appearance, temperament, and location. So which one of these 3 is going to be my first body paragraph? It can be a little longer if you want, Grace. Appearance is going to be my first body paragraph. I'm going to talk about all about their appearances in my first body paragraph. Yes, these are on this week's page, Emma. Yep, they are posted already. So you don't have to, furiously take notes. They have to be in the same order as in the thesis. I'm not super strict about that. Some instructors are, but it's probably a good idea to do it that way. And then, of course, I'm going to be talking about in my second body paragraph all about their differences in temperament, and then their differences in location is going to be my third one. Okay, so notice that I didn't say anything about an introductory paragraph or a conclusion paragraph. So I'm worried about in my thesis statement, I'm worried about what I'm talking about in my body paragraphs. What, yeah, Grace, and that's just a difference in instructor. I'm afraid we're not all identical. Good and bad things, right? So your thesis statement is going to be a part of your outline. I also call this the skeleton of your essay. Why might I call this a skeleton of your essay? Right, the base, the foundation, the basic structure. I've not filled out every single detail that I'm going to be talking about or every single word that I'm going to type into my essay. These are just really my notes. There is going to be a lot missing. Exactly. I will flesh this stuff out. That kind of sounds gruesome, but I will flesh this out in my essay. Oh, Grace is asking if the outline isn't good and well thought out, then the paper won't be good. As a rule, usually yes. Usually. Oh, Emma says she learned the value of outlines a few years ago. I learned it whenever I was a senior in high school. Story time. I was a pretty good writer whenever I was a middle schooler and a high schooler, and I got to do a dual enrollment class in high school where my high school English teacher taught me a college class, and it was a writing class, and so I was writing for her. She required us to turn in outlines, but I was kind of cocky, actually. I would write my paper and then come up with some sort of outline after I'd written my paper, and I was starting to make D's on my papers. And it's like I'm not a D student, and I was definitely not a D writer. I went to her. Morgan's like, I remember this from last year. Uh, I went to her and I asked her, Miss Caps, what am I doing wrong? I'm not a D student. She said, well, your organization is a bit off. You seem like your ideas are choppy. You jump around. It's not really a cohesive paper. And I said, okay. She asked me, she said, did you do your outline first? And I said, no, I did it after I wrote my paper. And she said, try doing it the other way around, the way you're supposed to. And I said, okay. And so I did. And I ended up pulling an A out of the class because I finally gave in to doing the outline first. My writing was a lot more easy to follow because I'd thought it out before I started writing it. So do your outline first. Trust me. Every student who I've ever convinced to do an outline first has benefited from it. Nobody has been worse for doing their outline first. So your outline starts with your thesis statement. Look at here. This looks exactly like the one that I had on the slide before. I've color coded this for you. I've mentioned the elephant's differences in appearance. Here is where I'm going to make a paragraph out of that. Asian and African elephants look very different. African are larger. The skin is different. Africans have wrinkled skin and Asians have smoother skin. Their tusks are different. The African elephants, the males and females, have tusks, and Asian elephants, only males have large tusks. So all of these details I have thought about and organized underneath my topic sentence of they look different. Their appearance is different. Okay, I'm thinking about it before I put it down in my paper so that I get everything organized. Maybe once I get to my paper, I don't want to talk about their size. Maybe I don't want to talk about their tusks, but I've already thought about it and I can put it in there if I want to leave it out. Then my second body paragraph will be talking about their temperament. Now, I didn't expand on this because I didn't have a whole lot of room. And of course, my third one would be below this. Give me a green check if you're understanding how to do an outline. I don't want to beat a dead horse, as they say in my neck of the woods. Awesome. Okay, lots of green checks. That makes me happy. I give you a template. Do you guys know what a template is? Anybody ever used a template for anything? Yes? A template is posted on Week 12's classroom page for the outline. So it's all laid out for you. All you have to do is fill in your ideas. So what I've done is I've said thesis statement goes here. You put your thesis statement here. It's kind of like plugging it in to what I've already got for you. You can choose to use it or not. It's up to you. It's just something to help. Any questions on doing your thesis and outline? You guys were all giving me green checks, so I think we're pretty good. Looking good, looking good. Okay, moving along. Okay, I already asked if you guys have any questions. So let's move along. I think we actually will have time to do this today. Yay! Raise your hand if you would like a mystery question. Grace, Pennsylvania Grace, you can have number 1. Emma, number 2. Oh, let me give you guys privileges. There you go. Sarah, number 3. Amanda, number 4. I think I've worn you guys out today with all the information. Rebecca, number 5. Sophia, number 6. North Carolina Grace, number 7. Liam, number 8. Jake, number 9. And Jessica, number 10. Got them all. Everybody just had to recover real quick from all the load of information. Rebecca, you are 5. Ooh, Morgan found a mistake. What'd you find? Let's see. North Carolina Grace, you are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're 7. Oh, let's see. Oh, yes, it is. A yoke is something that you put on an animal to pull a plow. A yolk, Y-O-L-K, is the middle of the egg. Very good. I made these so long ago. I may have done that on purpose, but I may have done it on accident. Yeah, nice job. Good eye. Mm. What page number are these on? Hold on. Let me dig my book out. This would be 12. These stems are on page 101. 101. Got some interesting words in here this week. You guys are my explaining class. I'm going to make some of these. Oh, come back. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Come back. I'm going to change the color of a couple of these so I don't go blind. There we go. Let's see. There we go. Let's change it. Come back. There you go. That's okay. Whew, busy. Busy. You guys are my explaining class. It gets to be a busy slide, but that's great. All right, I think all of them are answered. So for time's sake, let's start going over these. Number one, are anaerobic bacteria found primarily in windy places? No, anaerobic bacteria are bacteria that lives in environments free from oxygen or air, because aero means, or air, A-E-R, means air. And then an means without. So an anaerobic bacteria will be found, like in an airtight container or something like that. Oh, we'll get down to that. We'll get down. Okay, so aerobic exercises are when you're moving lots of air through your lungs. Tell me about it, Grace. Number two, is a thoroughbred racehorse a filigree? No, because fill means thread, and a racehorse will not be skinny, it would be strong. Well, let's see. Fill would be thread-like. Yep, that's right. It would be a strong horse. Actually, they have long legs, though. Good, good. Number three, would you put iodine on gastroenteritis? No, because you can't eat iodine. Ugh. Gastro means intestine or the digestive system or the stomach. Right. So, inflammation is itis. So anything with itis on the end of it is going to be inflamed, usually painful, red, irritated. And so gastroenteritis would be gastro stomach. Enter is the intestines. And so the gastro system is anything from your mouth to the exit. And then so it's talking about the intestines. I've never had gastroenteritis, but I've heard it's really uncomfortable. And no, you can't put iodine on it. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, I see. Rebecca found, has a kidnapping victim been abducted? No, this is okay. It's not a mistake. You may have, it may not be something that you would write, but it's not incorrect the way it is. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go for number four. Would you enjoy receiving a posthumous award? No, because it's awarded to you after you're dead. They do this. I'm not sure why. To carry on the person's memory. Why would you give someone who's not with us anymore an award? I don't know, but it happens. Posthumous means after death. Number five. Number five. Well, you wouldn't know it, would you? Number five. Does a person with hypoglycemia have a low supply of blood sugar? Yes, hypo means under, glyc means sweet. Ah, very good. And anemia means of the blood, or emia means blood. So hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. Any of you guys in here have hypoglycemia? If you don't mind sharing. I'm not trying to ask your medical history or anything. Maybe, Amanda, maybe. The posthumous award, you mean? That's a good point. Like honoring that person, giving the award to the family. That's a good point. Maybe I judged that too quickly, too harshly. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay. So I don't think anybody in here has hypoglycemia. That's awesome. Number six, is an erythrocyte a white blood cell? No, it's a red blood cell. That's what makes blood red. Exactly. So we have erythro means red. That's a big old stem for a little old word. And then cyte means cell. So cytoplasm, things like that. The things that you learned in biology. There you go. That's why it means the way what it means. Grace, whiteboard turn back on for a second, please. Okay. There we go. Number seven, need to go through these a little quicker here. Is the epidermis on the dermis? Yes, it is. I had an explanation, but I accidentally deleted it. Yes, because epi means on. So if somebody ever tells you your epidermis is showing, you can just say, duh. Number 8, is albumin the egg white or the egg yolk? It is the egg yolk because ALB means white. Alb means white. We don't call it that, we just call it the egg white though. Number 9, is the epicenter of an earthquake far from the quake's center? No, it is not. Epi means on, and so the epicenter of the earthquake. Do we have anybody in here who's living close to the fault? I don't think so. Most of us are East Coasters this early in the morning. There we go. So epicenter would be the very center of the earthquake. The closer to the epicenter you are, the harder the earthquake shakes. Number 10, has a kidnapping victim been abducted? Yes, because abduct means take, well, ab means away, and duct means led. So to be abducted is to be led away from, I guess, where you're supposed to be, right? Okay. Okay, let's move on. I have I have one major question that I want you guys to ask, to answer for me. Okay, so two questions here. I'm going to turn on the whiteboard for you guys to type. Did Victor ever find his humanity, do you think? And what did the afterword say about Victor and his simplicity? If you had an afterword to your version, I hope you read it because it gave us some insight about Victor's condition, his mental capacity and condition. Did Victor ever find his humanity? Ah, yes, he found love in his family. He was more animal than human in the beginning of the story. Still a human, in genetic purposes, but not in, spiritual personality, actions, behavior. That's another route that you can go in your paper. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, you think he did? I think so. He didn't quite, meet the expectations that they wanted him to, but I think he did. Oh, yes, little things like rain and acorns, they made him really happy. So sweet when he would start laughing and just, you could tell that he was just so content, so sweet. Anybody pick up on the mental, what would you say it is? It's a mental disability. I don't know that you would even call it that. What challenge did they suspect that Victor faced that they didn't have any idea what it was before? Oh, right. I like that somebody is saying it depends on what you mean by finding his humanity. Yay, Grace.